Welcome to Academy of Tone 247. Today we have a special edition on AMP1 versus AMP1, AMP1 Mercury edition versus AMP1 Iridium edition. Yeah, and it's a special metal edition with co-host Emanuel Knorr. And I'm so happy to have him here with me because he's the expert.
Hey, Thomas, thanks for introducing me. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to be here today with you. And I'm looking forward to hear what kind of tones you came up with.
Yeah.
So everyone heard the intro song, which we just did, which was a great experience. It's one of your older tunes, right? It's more than 30 years old, you said, right?
Yeah, exactly. The song I recorded in the session of my very first solo album in the 90s. I think it was 1992 or 3. And I didn't put that song on the first album, even though it was one of the, tracks that we recorded, because it was not complete. I kind of liked the riff, but it felt like, I had other songs that were more complete. And then in 2000, and I think it was 2, I had a very electronic album, 21st Century Guitar. And at that time, I rediscovered that song and I added some very bizarre, poppy, dance-like tune and a middle part into that more or less rocky tune. And now finally, with you, you added some real metal to it. So the lifespan of that song is already 30 years.
Yeah, and it goes on and on. I mean, that was the fun part, actually, right? So the song felt like it crossed genres basically, so it didn't stick to just one style. And we now basically continued the tradition of that tune. So it was very fun to give it, a new spin with some 7-string metal guitar and all of that. That was great.
And a new life. So from my side, I'm having here the Iridium. That's the amp that I think I designed for the metal guys.
Certainly.
And but I mean, you can tell about all the details. Let me show you what I consider a sound that I would have fun playing with. I mean, this is a mini humbucker Les Paul, tuned to D maybe or a little lower, and that's all. Okay, for me, I'm not the metal expert, but I'm using the classic channel right now with some boost, probably way too much gain for what is considered to be serious metal. But this is your part. You are the expert. But
that's an interesting topic to get in right at the start, right? So how much gain is enough gain? And it seems like there's not going to be an answer to please everyone. So I mean, it always depends on what you're doing, right? So if I was practicing, I'd lower down the gain, certainly, because it's not about, not too much about enjoying yourself tone-wise. It's about working on technique. While if I'm writing something, I just want to get comfy with the tone. So I think the tone you just had, there certainly was some nice compression to it, some nice distortion also in the lower registers, right? So it's not only that fizzy stuff up there, which gives you that kind of wall of sound potential to get. I'd say that there's different truths to that question actually. So the tone you just had, I mean, felt very natural. What I really liked about it is that it was kind of tight, and you were able to get all the palm mutes and down with some definition, but at the same time you had enough sustain and enough overtones, to do that harmonic kind of trick, which is a good thing,
Yeah, what I learned is, of course, to create the wall of sound, especially when you are multi-tracking rhythm guitars, you have to be careful with gain. I mean, less is more. you know. And now me being just by myself having fun, of course, more gain is sometimes a bit more fun, especially for a guy who is not a metal guy. So I have the work a little bit done by the sound, you know. So that's classic channel with gain on 10, but no boost, and basically mids in the middle, bass at whatever, maybe pushed 1, and the treble a little less, but you know, and the side control in the middle, I guess. I have a sound like that. The classic toy for most of the guys is the good old tube screamer. I have it here. What is your preferred setting on the tube screamer? Less gain?
The only setting that I can likely use until I do my last metal album would be you put gain on 0.
Yeah.
You would put tone quite high. So it depends on the tube screamer model you have, right? Depending on the chip which you have, you may put tone all the way up, or it's somewhere at 7, 8, something like that, and also level all the way, right? So this is kind of, I mean, it certainly does add some gain. It's just the nature of the pedal, right? But I mean, you don't want to overdo it. You just want to give it a little boost to get rid of muddy frequencies, of lower frequencies.
Yeah.
Exactly. Low end is great, but you need to control it, and this is kind of the tool to go for that. Yeah, so try that setting. I'd be interested to hear how that sounds with your hands.
And the funny thing is exactly how I set it up even before we talked about it, you know. So it seems to be the sweet spot. Without it. So yeah, it has a little bit more punch in the mids without being shrill and without being muddy in any way. So.
And now do me a favor, please use the modern channel. This is where I'm going to be home.
Yeah. Yeah, fun.
Yeah, that's it, baby. I mean, sometimes it feels, it feels that it doesn't make really sense to use certain pedals and certain amp settings, because to be honest, so the modern channel, when I play it, right, it feels like a more scooped version. So it does certainly have more low end and little less mids than the other channels. That's at least how I feel when I'm playing it. And what the tube screamer does, it basically takes out some of the low end and adds some of the mids. So it's kind of working exactly against what the channel is meant to be. But sometimes that's just the the thing that you can't really explain, but it would just feel right in the process. I mean, I can tell hours and hours of stories where I would, mix guitars in the DAW, and then on the one equalizer I would take out certain frequencies just to add them with the second instance of the same equalizer, right? So sometimes just the way a pedal is voiced, it seems to do a very different thing that doesn't suit really the original tone, but it makes sense in the end, and that's something certainly you have to try. But the setting. With the modern channel, right? That's certainly, I think the modern channel might be based somewhere around, kind of a 5150 kind of tone, and this is one of the most iconic tones you'll have in metal all day. Just that kind of amp with that kind of pedal in that setting, and that's it, right? Most metalheads will be heavy until the end of their life, basically, with that tone.
Yeah, and what you're just mentioning is that if you have a frequency added in the front, you sometimes go and watch for a similar frequency in the post EQ to get it out again. That is actually what we are doing when we are doing sound design. When I do the sound design on amps a lot, we have an EQ section that is behind the overdrive, post the overdrive stages, and there is a lot of pre-EQing before the clipping and before the drive stage, and of course in between. And all these EQ curves that are in the circuitry. They add up to a certain frequency curve, and that kind of thing generally is kind of evened out or balanced out in the post EQ. And that's a funny thing, because that is the case for almost every guitar sound, from blues to metal. It's a general recipe for sound design. And I found a reason for that, because our ears want to listen to something that is even. And if there's just shrillness, it doesn't work. But in the way you trigger the overdrive, it makes it more metal. Or if it's fluffy and bluesy and loose, it makes it more bluesy. But in the end, the frequency mix is similar. And that has nothing to do with the genre. It has to have the punch, either coming from the post EQ or from the pre EQ. And if there's a frequency too much, you have to even it out. And that's the case for any guitar sound, any good guitar, balanced guitar sound.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting approach, to be honest. And that's also how I feel mostly. Well, from the perspective of not of an amp designer, which I'm certainly not. I admire work and I'd like to play amps, but I don't know anything about building them. But from the perspective of a mixing engineer and a producer, that's certainly true. So if you would compare the final EQ curve of the finally mastered track of a metal song, and then maybe for instance like the pop song, right? You'd be mostly end up with kind of a very similar approach to both of them. I think it's the nuances, right, which sets them apart. So, for example, right, and that the old kind of tone, right, the scoop mid tone. So you certainly get rid of your mids when you mix metal guitars with a modern tone, mostly, right? If you're talking about like melodic death metal and thrash metal, all these kind of genres, right? You'll add them mostly in the mastering process. You'll refill that frequency hole with other things like the snare would take over then in the mids. So in the end, it needs to be balanced. I think because when I'm testing and playing gear, right, and we talked about that before, the one thing is to sit there enjoying yourself in the moment. But I'm always trying to think of how to use that in real life, because that's where I work. That's where I make money, right? With playing with bands, producing bands, and all these things. It just works kind of good with these settings, basically, right? It's a neutral ground, and then you'll have all the freedom in the post production, right, to either add or duck certain frequencies, and that's just what I enjoy about that tone, right?
Yeah. Here, one more comment about the tube screamer. I mean, I like the tube screamer. This is my old one. You can tell that it was bought in last century and being used in many situations. And the tube screamer has a certain mid hump around 700 hertz. So it kind of cuts slowly, decreasing the lower low end, the 100 hertz and even the stuff below with the low cut function. And this kind of mid hump here, I decided to have a similar kind of mid hump for the boost in the Iridium, but only half as much. So I liked the focus of the frequency, but just in a not so intense version, because I thought, if you have a tube screamer, you use the tube screamer. But I liked it so much that I thought the Iridium is tight by itself. But if you want to add a little bit of that spice, it's part of your boost in the Iridium also.
Just one other way.
Yeah, and of course everybody has its own secret weapon when it comes to boost and coloration. For instance, this Precision Drive by Horizon is basically a tube screamer and a low cut in one pedal. And the low cut, it's a handy thing when you have like 8-string guitars, or how low can you go and drop, I don't know, A or whatever you do. Then this will definitely tighten up your low end on this switch. It's a super simple circuitry. It's what I explained on the tube screamer. It's the low cut, and here you simply can switch the roll off frequency, what's getting into the circuit. You could do the same trick with a standard EQ pedal and simply reduce this side which are the lows, and do this.
It's funny that you say that, because I remember when the Precision Drive just came out, I was still in university, so you know, financially not very stable. I wanted to have that pedal because everyone was having it for of my friends who play metal guitar. So I had an old kind of a self-made tube screamer with a DIY kit, and I had a Boss GE7. So right, which is I think it's the GE7, right, which is just a standard kind of EQ pedal similar to what you have.
Yeah.
So I researched what the Precision Drive does technically. I mean, basically, you know, back then there wasn't ChatGPT, so you really had to put in some time. And I found out that it's basically doing that same thing, right? Doing a low cut plus something that TubeScreamer does. So these pedals in a row work perfectly fine. Just as said, I can confirm that. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, such a curve, such a mid hump was also Eddie Van Halen's weapon on the first album, with an EQ into his Plexi Marshall and the Variac that gave him a little harder clip. So it's a recipe that has been out there for ages. It comes back in, you know, like everything, and that's the thing about, you know, when I, you know, metal in my world, I was teaching guitar as a teenager because I needed to make some money, and I remember some guy came around and asked me, "Can you play this? Can we show you what this is?" And it was Ozzy Osbourne. For me, was this metal? I think that the word metal didn't exist back then. For me, it was still rock. You know, it was just a harder rock. You know, Randy Rhoads kind of thing. But when we look at the genre of metal, how strong it got and how defined it got and how diverse in the different styles, I think it's amazing just to see what a direction that came from the roots that I still understand very much has diversified and intensified in a way, and that's fascinating as evolution, as a logical progression in music and also in sound, because with all the different genres we have different sounds. I mean, good old Ozzy with Tony Iommi was using a Rangemaster, the same thing Richie Blackmore used, because this was the low cut of the 60s. And then, you know, I think in all the genres we find similar ingredients, just mixed in a different way together.
There's some truth in it. I think that metal is one of those genres. I mean, you know, besides these kind of diehard, you know, true metal kind of fans, but besides that, I mean, I think what really makes metal special is the thing that it can combine with so many different genres and then create subgenres by that. Because right, if you look back to how metal sounded in the 80s and how it sounds now, it's a completely different style of music. Right. So remember back being black, like in the times of like glam metal, and now you take a look at modern technical death metal. I mean, certainly there's a parallel in some things, right? But it just evolved, and there's so many different genres like symphonic metal, death metal, core, like metalcore, deathcore, all these core subgenres, thrash metal, you know, and the list just goes on. Progressive metal, and they all have like certain spices which just makes the sound of and the tone of their genre. And I mean, generally, you know, distorted guitar. So I'm teaching at a music school, and I'm talking a lot with colleagues who play other instruments and all of that. And one opinion, which doesn't make me a very popular colleague to them, but one opinion which I have is that kind of, I have never ever in my whole life heard an instrument which is as expressive as distorted electric guitar. Because, right, and this is what every beginner, like, what kills you at the beginning, basically, right? So you have all the noises that you want to suppress, so you need to go explore palm muting and all of these things. It kind of seems like a disadvantage in the beginning, but once you get on with guitar playing and get better, this is the most amazing thing. I mean, it's like you have all the power to shred, to talk, to sound very smooth, to sound very edgy, to sound in tune, to sound out of tune, right? You can do all these things on purpose with the electric distorted guitar. And distorted guitar, I mean, it is what it is. This is the foundation of metal, and this may be one of the reasons why this genre is still alive and evolving so well in comparison to maybe other genres of music, right? Because you can explore so many different things. You add a string, you do a different tuning. You there's a new pedal coming out, a new amp coming out, which does certain things. You combine it with an old pedal, with an old amp, and all of that. So it will always go on. This is the book of metal is not closed yet.
Yeah, and for me, it's even the genre of the whole electric guitar. I mean, if you look what you can do with an electric guitar, you can play it clean, you can play grunge, you can play metal, you can play rock, you can play jazz, you can play any style, and it is the only instrument where you can really have fun with bending the strings, have the electronics, have a tactile interaction. Try to bend the string on a grand piano, there's no.
I've seen guys doing it.
Sure.
Opening up the piano and then doing some, but didn't seem very economic, the movement. Yeah.
I played in a band where our female keyboard player was putting tennis balls in the grand piano just for fun.
But just having the string, like flesh of your hand and then the string is a different story than having, this kind of knob to do on your piano.
Yeah, and it's for me the good thing in guitar in general is anything you learned, even if it's the last country lick, you can use it in metal. You can use it in any, when you understand how to play whatever triplets or this kind of rhythm, and this is an ingredient that can be used again in no matter what you do. And this is endless. And sometimes that's maybe also a problem, because some people think, I want to get to the end. I want to master the guitar so I know everything. There is no everything. And the moment you try, the more you try, the harder you learn, the more you understand that there is guys out there that you can't touch. And that's a good thing for me as in philosophy as well. It's like, do your thing and let others do their thing, 100%. Be inspired, and grab whatever you like of those guys. But just don't even try to be Mr. Everything in every lick. You will never get there. It's the universe is too big.
Certainly, when I was younger and I started learning things by ear, I was learning from my heroes like Jeff Loomis and all these guys back then, right? And I played their licks, and I played them with mistakes. And these licks, I still play them today. Like the licks which were meant to be licks by John Petrucci, by Jeff Loomis or whatever, and playing them wrong when I was 15, or some of the licks which are part of my standard vocabulary, not still nowadays, right? And I think this is a very healthy approach to playing guitar. It's not an excuse for not practicing and nailing certain things if you want to have them, but it's totally okay to do things different. And this is why guitar, it's such a huge industry still. Right there. I don't know too. I'm not an expert for all the music industries, but I'm also working at a label which is doing rap music and things like that. So I'm kind of in touch with a lot of musicians, and whenever I feel, let me put this differently to not offend someone, but I think there are genres which evolve very slowly because there are certain rules. You have to play like this, you have to hold your hands like this, your tone needs to be like this, and whatever. And this is certainly not the case for rock music and anything that evolved from that, right? So just do whatever you're comfortable with, and that's it.
Yeah, I have a little Jeff Loomis story. I mean, me not being the guy that understands all the details about Jeff Loomis. So I just met the guy at trade shows and things, and I knew he's one of those heroes, but not knowing all the details. Very nice guy, by the way. He stepped by and said, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I was so busy. I was not at the booth. He was coming and waiting for me. And then he got my telephone number by a mutual friend and he texted me, stuff like that. And then later on, I found out who Jeff Loomis really was. and then at Guitar Summit, I think it was 3 years ago or maybe 4 years ago, I ended up jamming with him. We had the electric guitar night, and of course we played stuff that I understand or know songs, and that he knows. I don't know exactly what we played. Maybe we played some Aussie, I think. Down, stuff that I was teaching that my student when I was a teenager still, and he knew that those tunes. And I think I have a clip with him trying out the AMP1, and I think that was that original 59 Les Paul. Yeah.
In Jeff Loomis' hands.
Of course, because I handed it to him. I had to make sure that he's not dropping it, but he had fun. Yeah,
that's amazing. I mean, he's certainly one of my guitarists, and from many people out there. Imagining to be on stage next to him, it always sounds intimidating.
But in the end, these guys are so nice. And that's the other thing about the Guitar Summit. I played with Per Ackerson. I played with a lot of who was it? Fuck, I have to look it up. A bunch of metal heroes, and it's like we simply jammed and had fun like crazy. And it's like, the guy comes on stage, and I thought, you know what? I need you to be louder. So I simply got on his rig and turned him up and said, go for it. Yeah. Anyway, so big fun.
That's usually the most fun moments. Also, like, if I'm, one of my heroes also is John Petrucci, right? Like everyone in the metal guitar scene, and he has this guitar camp, and no one cares about these videos where he would play his instrumentals or other players will play their instrumental. Everyone wants to see the video where they all jam. That's the most interesting thing all the time. Right?
Yeah. Okay. I have a few other pedals here on my table that I also wanted to mention because they were like secret weapons or like some recommendations from different guys. There is a guy, Euge Valuvirta, famous for his Bad Boy JCM 800 amplifier that is unbelievably aggressive because it fell off a cabinet, was restored, and we had this amp also here. He was here also on the Academy of Tone, and killer amp, I have to admit, because it's partially broken. It starts with the input gain, and so there is more aggression on that amp than like on anything else. And
it sounds like the good stories. When things are broken at the beginning, then this is I'm listening.
Yeah, and so Euge is using the Iridium with the classic channel, and he adds the SD1. That's his kind of pedal. I just want to show you that sound, that noise. Of course, I'm not Euge. I can't play like him. But
perhaps you can break the AMP1, and maybe it will sound even closer.
Yeah. Okay. It's a classic, and now. So that adds a little, extra punch in his style. It's compared to the tubescreamer. The tubescreamer has a little very mid-focus thing, and this has a bit more aggressive.
Yeah, it sounds more fizzy.
Yeah, a bit more fizzy. I mean,
I think that the tube screamer is very good at evening out things, right? So
yeah,
smoothing out things, and then this, it feels like the tube screamer like takes more than it adds, and this pedal adds. Now this is giving
yeah,
something to it, right?
very nice. Yeah, and then there is another thing that is the ODD, or it used to be the OCD by Fulton. It's basically a Marshall style overdrive in a pedal, and this is a recommendation by a guy from the US, Jared Grumblatt, who has a channel that also reviewed the Iridium, and he said this combination, the modern channel and the ODD or OCD, is his more is more favorite. So let me show you real quick. This is like the modern.
That was very interesting.
Yeah. So if in case you want more, there is more, and so that's the thing about the amps, the AMP1 in general. They offer a lot, and sometimes you don't need more. But if you want more, it's totally fine to use your personal spice. It has always been like that, and for me. There are the purists, only guitar and a cable, and otherwise you end up in
not
hell.
A metal.
Yeah, and not in. I mean, only some blues purists, I'm happy for everybody who is happy, who has found this recipe, and
but let me comment on that a little. So.
Yeah.
I've been using this amp a lot on tour with Majesty back a couple of years ago. Now with my new band Sky Tribe, and also on all different types of gigs. And what I really like about that is that if I just had the amp, if I had as extreme, but something you would have reverb, right, to make sure that I'm not going to sound completely dry at leads. So this would certainly do the gig. But if I'd be the pedal nerd and the tone nerd and sit here in my basement, and wanted to mess around with tones and try out certain things, it also can do that, right? Also in the clean channel, it does have the headroom and the distorted channels. I mean, the identity of the amp pushes through, but it can perfectly work with certain styles of pedals, as you just showed. So this is certainly also a quality about the amp which I like, right? To be able to serve both, just the straightforward guy who just wants, give me some tone, I gotta play the gig, or the guy who wants to just get obsessed with tone and try out all day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's why do I have all these pedals here, in the background? Yeah, I mean, this is the reason is clear, because I love tone, and they gave me something in a magic combination of a certain guitar and a certain amp or a certain setting that I loved so much that I kept the pedal. I mean, I didn't buy the stuff for no reason. No, there's the OCD, the real one, like the predecessor.
Yeah, I gotta admit, it's a fake one. It looks like the real one, but that's not the original. Someone tricked me into buying that. Yeah, like the center stuff you have for metal, right? So it's just a part of my pedal collection. So I'm having a board here, and there's so much pedals, but my working tone is based on something very similar. AMP1 Iridium modern channel, tube screamer in front. That's it. And the funny thing is, and maybe we should talk about that a little bit. When it comes to leads, I love the AMP1 Iridium, but for full-blown shred metal leads, I prefer the Mercury.
Really?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that before you dive into the do the deep dive on that. When I personally switched to the Mercury, I'm already torn towards my classic rock DNA. Let me sounds, but you can show it in more detail how you use it. Just in my how I see the things and how I hear it. This is Iridium modern channel no pedal at this moment. Mercury clean, but let's go for the modern. So for me, there is more aggression in the Iridium versus the Mercury. I'm not saying this is not good. It's just for me, not it's being different. The metal guy. Yeah, it's different. But not being the metal guy is like the Iridium can draw me more into this other world. From my perspective, it draws me away from my, if I play a Mercury modern. So there is more classic rock instantly.
Yeah.
If I do the same thing on the Iridium, there's already this kind of tone that's like, and that makes me a different guy. But hey, what is your point on this?
I mean, I'm happy to after our part here together to show people a little more on what I do with the Mercury. But I throw into the debate that, I mean, the equalizer on the AMP1 on both of them, it's actually and I'm not saying this for any advertisement kind of reasons or whatever. It's the most powerful equalizer I've ever had on an amplifier, and I think you've proven that a lot. Imitating so many different amps in your Academy of Tone history. So you've been doing that for years, and I mean, it's an analog amp. It's not anything digital that it's meant to model or whatever. It still is capable. It's kind of an analog model amp, right? So it's super powerful, and I think that if you have some patience and a good ear, that you can do a lot of things with that EQ. So that's the one thing. The second thing is both of the amps are voiced a certain way, right? So there's a lot of power in the EQ, but certainly they still have a natural voicing. And that voicing feels certainly, especially in the modern channel, tighter and more scooped on the Iridium, which is the reason why people buy it, because I want to have that tone. However, this would be my go-to tone for rhythm guitars. I say lead guitar, and I think that the Mercury sounds a little less controlled. It sounds more out of control. And I like that for playing lead guitar, right? So as I explained in the beginning, right? You'd avoid being too high in certain frequency ranges with metal guitar tone if it's right that modern go-to tone that I'm referring to, right? So you leave a hole in the frequency spectrum, right? To increase tightness and all of that, and that's different with lead guitar, right? So if your lead guitar EQ curves generally look a little more exaggerating on all the frequency areas that there are. Maybe do some bending and play 2 or 3, but it's mostly high notes, right? So kind of you need to make up for that. So it may not sound too thin. At least that's the kind of lead guitar tone which I enjoy. And there comes the voicing of the Mercury in pretty handy. It's not that controlled, it's not that tight, but I don't want to have a tight lead guitar sound. I want to have a juicy lead guitar sound, right? And that's why I love the Mercury so much for that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mercury, as you said, is less controlled. It's more natural. I mean, also, you know, inside the circuitry with all the stages, there's fewer EQing. It kind of, I was always a fan of those vintage amps, and the vintage amps have a quality that, especially when they are clean, they show really the guitar. You know, back in the days that they were just designed to be a thing that makes the guitar louder.
Well, an amplifier, right?
Yeah, the word.
Something amplifier. To amplify a guitar tone, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was not about, the focus was not on overdrive and post EQ and stuff like that. So it was very natural to the guitar, like just make it louder. And then when people came into with pedals, which, as we discussed, is cool anytime, you can focus in a certain direction by cutting some frequencies, by doing stuff. And I always try to be, in my amp designs, very focused towards the natural guitar thing. And this is totally the Mercury edition. It makes every guitar sound different, because the processing, the EQ processing and stuff like that is reduced to the bare minimum needed to give it the character, not like 100% focused in that direction. And because I always believe that with especially the Mercury, I want to have every guitar sound different. You should hear the real character of the guitar, and this comes with a trade-off, of course, if it is not that controlled. You still have the options of pedals if you want to control it. If not, you go with a raw source and enjoy that. And that's a quality by itself, which you also discovered.
Certainly, yeah. So, I mean, you were more considered like the vintage guy, though I think your metal chops are just fine. I mean, it's got some of these things down. I mean, very good, especially the pinch harmonics and all of that, right? Not everyone can do that. So you're more of a vintage guy, nevertheless, and you just use the metal amp. So I think it would only be fair if I, in my guitar playing parts, start using the Mercury. How's that?
Exactly. Hey guys, so I think now it's time that Emanuel takes over and does his full deep dive on the metal sounds, well, on the Mercury, and maybe you can compare it a little bit to the Iridium as well, so we get a better understanding what you get with each of the AMP1 models. Why actually there are two versions of the AMP1 Mercury and Iridium edition. Some people sometimes think, oh, they sound the same. What is the color is different? No, there is a lot of differences.
No. Yeah. They don't sound the same at all.
Yeah, and though of course you can try to get similar things, but I think the diversity of the amps is good to understand. Great for being this or that, and yeah. Hey, thanks so far, and now enjoy Emanuel because he's the maestro.
What is up, everyone? It's Emanuel here from my shredding booth, and I'm super happy to be on the show today. Thanks, BluGuitar, for having me. So I guess that most of you guys have just seen the interview I did with Thomas a week back or so, and it was such a nice chat. Also for me, it was quite joyful to rewatch it now and to see what we've talked about, and it's so fun to deep dive into guitar tones in general with this genius of a guitar player and amp designer. So yeah, today is my time to take over this stream and tell you a little bit about what I think makes a good tone, especially with this amplifier, the AMP1. So let's start out by me telling you a little bit about the history, how I got into playing AMP1 and into playing BluGuitar stuff anyway. So my name is Emanuel, and I'm a metal guitar player, I would say. I mean, you know, I also play other genres, but metal is kind of the main genre which I do, and especially shred guitar. I'm so much into that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, that's what I do professionally for a living. Teaching music, playing music, recording music, composing music, all things music, right? And if you do such a thing, then you know, over the time you get to work with different companies, and I worked with a couple of different amp manufacturers, and at some point, and this is going to be a topic in many of the streams to come, I got really much into digital amplifiers, and I think that your diehard BluGuitar fans, analog amplifier fans, may not like this kind of statement. However, the advantages were just great, and one of the most of the biggest advantages was the portability. So small devices, not needing to carry much stuff around, right? At the same time, you can see I have a couple of amps here, and right now I'm moving places, so I have quite a big collection of analog amplifiers. I love playing them, but being a touring musician, that was always kind of hard to work with these things on tour, especially if you had things like flight-in shows, where usually festivals, they book you on the cheapest Ryanair flights with just hand luggage, and you're gonna pay for all extras. And this is kind of that was kind of around a couple of years back, right before, you know, the pandemic and things like that hit, and where I discovered BluGuitar, and this was basically the perfect solution for me. Having an amplifier which is kind of the size of a digital amplifier, right? But it gives me all the stuff I want to have from an amplifier, which is analog tones. What I tend to say is that analog amplifiers, they react a little bit different, and they just move air, especially if you plug them into a cab. This is just a different feeling. And this is kind of how I got into BluGuitar, right? Being a touring musician, on the desperate search for something that will combine the best of both worlds: portability, just a practical device, which is maybe very useful on the road, and at the same time giving me analog tones that I can just enjoy playing. And now here I am, a couple of years later, working for BluGuitars in terms of this live stream. So it's likely that you will see my face on a couple of more live streams in the future, and we will talk all sorts of funny and interesting things about guitar, especially more modern guitar, especially metal guitar, because that's kind of but let's also get a little bit into tones and into playing guitar, because that's what I'm here for, right? Let me first of all tell you that I'm also reading the chat, so one of my eyes is always on the screen. If you have any kinds of questions, let me know. And unless I see them, I'm going to start now with a little program which I've prepared. So the first amp I want to talk about today is the Mercury, AMP1 Mercury. This is my amp close-up cam. I'm super sorry, it's not ideal. I had another cam which unfortunately did have a technical issue, so I had to. It's kind of good to see the settings and stuff like that. So what I did right now is for the intro, I used the modern channel, which is when I'm using this amp for metal tones, kind of my go-to channel. Because of the way it's voiced, but it does have let's not say channel, because actually this device just has one gain channel and the other one is a clean channel, but it's the modern voicing. And this amp has 3 voicings, which makes it kind of a really versatile amp. And let's start with the vintage voicing, because, you know, if we're progressing, this just makes sense to start from that. So as you can see, all of the settings are just in the middle. It's all on 5, except for the gain knob. So It's on 8 because I like to have a little bit of gain, right, for the style of music that I do. And this is kind of a good starting point, I think, if you dial into a tone. So with this device or with any other amp, right, the first thing I do is just putting everything in the middle except for gain and volumes and things like that, obviously, right? Because that will kind of enable you to hear how the amp sounds. You can do a lot with the equalizer on amps, especially on the BluGuitar amps, but this will kind of give you a first overview of what to expect from this amplifier. And I really like it. It's not the channel that I use the most, so I'm gonna be that honest with you in all of my streams to come. It's not the channel that I use the most, but this is mainly because I don't do this style of music too much. So the kind of being a session musician, I also sometimes use clean sounds and things like that. Here at home, when no one is overlooking on what I'm playing, if I just have the freedom to play everything that I'd like to play, I tend to use more high gain sounds. Now, still, I use this channel sometimes, and I'll tell you where I use it and why I use it. So there's a huge difference between practicing and playing guitar. So if I was practicing, I'd make sure that I had a setting which kind of sets the parameters roughly in a way that would feel natural to the style that I'm playing, right? So people always say you must practice with a clean sound and all of that, and adding gain is fake. I mean, tons of gain, right, can be considered a little bit of cheating. However, things like palm muting, controlling fret noise, string noise, this is very different. So if you had a very sophisticated jazz player, right, to play with a high gain sound, most of them they're having a hard and rough time when they do it, when they're not used to play with gain, and they play clean all their lives long. And certainly this is a very skillful ability, right, to be able to play sophisticated jazz lines. However, it would feel different for them with tons of gain. So does it mean they're bad? No, certainly not, right? It's just a different style of music. So if you were to practice your chops, being a rock guitar player, being a metal guitar player, being someone who generally likes to play solos with gain, I'd still have some gain on, but not as much as I'd use in the real world scenario. And that's what I use the vintage channel a lot for on this amplifier. Such a nice tone. You can see me playing an Ibanez AZ, which is not exactly a pure metal guitar. It just works very, very good. It makes me want to play the blues. That's something I don't say very often. Right? Just so much fun to play that. And you just see me playing a couple of faster lines here, right? And this is something which is it's muting all of that, but at the same time, you know, it's not going to make everything sound awesome that you play. So really, if you were to play fast things, you really had to pay attention to what and how you're playing. So that is the vintage channel. Such a juicy tone. It does have a lot of headroom, and it's a channel which doesn't feel quite overly equalized. So it certainly has a certain character to it, but it doesn't feel quite processed. So it feels like a very natural channel with a very balanced frequency curve. Let me put in the boost and see how that sounds. Right. So the boost just gives it a little extra kick, a little more sustain. Though, again, on this channel, I mean, you're not going to get the super high gain tones, right? It's still a vintage tone. as it says there. But yeah, if you were to play, you know, some lead guitar passages live and want to just have the extra kick, then also certainly the boost function on this device works very, very well. So I'm seeing that we do have some connection problems, so I'm hoping that it will get. I really hope that my Wi-Fi connection works here, and I'm super sorry for any inconvenience this may cause. All right, I'm gonna play a couple of last lines here on the vintage channel, and then I'll jump to the classic channel. Let's see how that sounds. Especially these muted legato lines. Playing legato but muted is one of my favorite techniques, and this just works so well on this channel. All right. That's it for the vintage channel. If you have any more questions about that, just make sure to leave them in the comments. For the time being, I now jump to the classic channel. So the classic channel obviously sounds a little bit different. Same settings, everything's in the middle, and let's just play a couple of riffs and licks to see what the main differences are. Alright, this is what it sounds like, and you can immediately tell that there, even without touching the settings, there's quite a difference. First of all, it feels more shaped, and this is nothing that, you know, I'm now saying with the intention to express that I find it better or worse. This is just something in technical terms, right, that we need to consider. So the vintage channel feels quite neutral, and therefore it feels quite natural. The classic channel, still, it's not overshaped, but there's certainly been some more aggressive EQing to this channel. So first of all, right, let me play a couple of chords. And let me play the same kind of thing on the vintage channel. Right, the first thing you can tell is that the classic channel feels slightly darker, right? So the vintage channel has a lot of headroom, which is generally a good thing, and something especially for low gain tones, right? Will give you the possibility to work very good by shaping the tone with like pedals and things like that. The classic channel now, it certainly feels like it would cut a little bit off the high frequencies. So therefore the it sounds slightly darker, but it's not exactly what I would call a dark tone, right? So we're not at a super dark tone, it's just slightly darker than the vintage channel. I feel there has also been something done to the bass and the mids, right? So in terms of high frequencies, it seems to be cut it a little bit off, which is certainly a good thing if you're into that kind of tone. Now I feel like high mids are boosted here slightly, right? Which immediately makes it sound a little more like squealy and things like that. So think pinch harmonics and these overtones really, they come out. And last but not least, I think also the bass is a little more present, right? So this is a channel which feels to be shaped a little bit more towards a certain tone. So I get something more like martially kind of vibes from this channel, which is something that I also really enjoy. Yeah, so I just had the boost on without the boost mode. Right. So this is really something which you know gives me certainly kind of the 80s vibes. That's why I'm trying to play these kind of riffs I just played. Right. It's still quite a juicy tone, a little darker than you know the pure vintage tones, but it has quite some juice to it, and it's just something which I really much enjoy playing for these kind of riffs. All right. Let's move on then to the same thing, just with the boost function activated. And this is certainly something which you know you use more for lead guitar kind of. I mean, obviously, you know, it gives you some more sustain, the boost function, and really, I think that what makes guitar players feel confident when they play is certainly sustain. I mean, where sustain is really just the definition of how long a note lasts acoustically, and you know, this is something that it just feels comfortable to play for me. So a fair amount of gain it's on 8, boost mode activated, and then just you know being that's it for the classic channel. So let's get to the modern channel, which is the channel that you'd like to be able to guess it very easily, right? My favorite channel on this amplifier. So let's get there and see how that sounds. Deactivate the boost mode and let's do some riffing here. That's the modern channel. So we'll again be able to hear kind of a similar difference to what the difference was between the vintage and the classic channel. So this one is even more shaped. Let's go back to the classic channel. Let me play something like thrashy kind of riffs on the classic channel just to see how it feels. Right? This is certainly, I mean, I can't speak for all the producers and audio engineers and guitar players, but generally, metal is a genre which is kind of known to work with a little amount of mids in the guitars. Even the metal tones, which are said to have a fair amount of mids compared to other genres where guitar is used, generally they feel more mid-scooped. So mid-scoop, what is it? It's basically taking a scoop and scooping out the mids, right? It just means that you'll have less mids and a fair amount of mid-cut happening. So that's something which I do all the time. And in fact, if you listen to the song we did in the beginning, and with quite a mid-scoop happening in the post-production. Now, why would guitar players do such a thing? So generally, and now we're getting a little more into audio engineering, which is something that I also do. But I think it's quite interesting to combine that with guitar playing, guitar tones and everything. Generally in the low register, so, you know, in the sub bass frequencies and also in the higher bass frequencies, right? So let's say somewhere around 100, 100, 300 up until to that kind of frequency. This is kind of where the bass is happening, and from the bass, you'll generally get things like this kind of wall of sound. So it's something that feels very massive, that you'd certainly hear coming out of the speakers, that you'd not only hear, that you'd feel coming out of the speakers. So it's a very powerful frequency range, right? This is the frequency range where you can put it like this, basically where the power is happening. If the bass kind of guitar tones in metal, certainly. All right. There's a mid cut happening here. We talked about the mids. The mids, they kind of make things juicy. If you try to explain guitar tones in other terms, right? This is so that is certainly where a lot of good stuff is happening. However, the high frequencies is where the definition is. And this is kind of what modern metal guitar tones are about, right? You want to have definition for all the fast lines and for all the low notes, low tuned guitars and things like that. And you want it to sound massive. So you're focusing mainly on the high frequencies and the bass frequencies. The stuff in the middle can be nice, but mostly it's about the volume differences. And this is essentially lower in volume than the other ones. And by understanding what I just explained, right, you can certainly tell why that is. So I'd say that the vintage channel is the loudest channel on this amplifier, right? Let's see if this amp will prove me wrong. So this is the vintage channel. This is the classic channel. And this is the modern channel. Right? And it kind of felt like they would decrease in volume. So why is that? They increase in gain, they decrease in volume. Well, that's because of the shaping. So if you start to cut out if you start to cut out frequencies, right? This is something which will make certainly the volume drop. And on most speakers, right, the mid-range is kind of present because it's very expensive for speaker manufacturers to create speakers where you have a very good bass and very good high frequency areas. So mostly they are dependent on mids. So it just makes sense that the sounds will decrease in volume, right? Because we're taking a fair amount of mids out of the guitar tone. Right, so this is a kind of tone which I work with all day long. I know about the kind of disadvantages, if you will, and I really much enjoy a mid-heavy guitar tone as well. But this just proves itself to be kind of useful in a modern metal scenario, right? So imagine, imagine a modern metal band. You'd have maybe like produced vocals with a lot of back vocals. Maybe you have screams, you may have synthesizers, you may have orchestral elements, you have a drummer who's doing double bass and blast beats and all of that. So it's kind of a busy arrangement. It differs from the way people played guitar in the 80s, in the 70s, and in the 90s, right? And kind of mono metal, we're talking about like things like progressive metal, death metal, extreme metal, things like that, right? Usually these are genres where quite some stuff is happening. It just makes sense to step back with the guitar tone a little bit and to just leave what you would need, which is the bass, right? So the heavy kind of vibe coming from there, the power coming from there, and then the high frequency areas where you will have some of the definition, and you leave the mids to other things happening. So for example, like bass guitar, modern bass guitar is quite much depending on the mids as well. All right, I'm talking too much, I feel. So let me play a little bit more. Let's get the boost on, and afterwards I'll tell you a little bit about the signal chain because that's what people have asked for in the chat. By the way, guys, I hope that my internet got a little bit better. So just leave me a comment, and we'll try to fix that for the next stream. So it's true. I'm in with the Wi-Fi with my Wi-Fi network here, and I'm trying to fix that for the next session we'll have. But now let's get it on with the modern channel and the boost as well. And I'm gonna put some more reverb on it, right, to make it even more lead guitar-ish. Right. So it's so much fun to play this kind of tone. So we've talked about what they cut out in the BluGuitar factory, which is mids, but what they certainly added is gain. And therefore again sustain, right? So that is something, again, which makes you feel comfortable as a guitar player, which just opens up so many opportunities of playing certain things, right? And yeah, it's I'm in my comfort zone with this channel, man. With this kind of setting, with this channel, it's just great. So let's now talk a little bit about the signal chain, which is fairly easy, right? To be honest. So first thing is my guitar here, which is an Ibanez AZ, and it's not the super expensive. It's not the super expensive one, right? So people always, I'm an Ibanez endorser, so they tend to think that I get super special stuff. It's an Indonesia-made Ibanez, and it's now 5 years old or something, right? I got it on the Guitar Summit 2019 or 18, which was, by the way, when I discovered BluGuitar amplifiers as well. Yeah. Just an Indonesian-made Ibanez, no mods, nothing. It's not even set up very good. I love this guitar. I play it all day long, but it has a couple of deads. Can't even bend some of the strings. I was very lazy in terms of setup, so I just took the guitar out of the case. I had it back on a session last week. It's quite cold out there in Germany, and it wasn't at the core for 2 days, so the setup is screwed up. But yeah, that's the guitar I'm playing. So I'm playing a handicapped guitar right now. I'm having quite a cheap Fender practicing cable, which goes into the amp, and there's nothing like no pedal, nothing in between there. I hope I can prove it to you by lifting the pedal up, right? It's just going straight to the amp. Yeah, I mean, I can't show you the side EQ settings, right? Because there are a couple of settings I missed it in the beginning. This is my second camera. So my tripod broke. I have a tripod. So I had to improvise. This is my iPhone currently showing the settings here. Yeah, that's just the AMP1. Then from the AMP1, I'm taking the speaker output, which is then going straight into my audio interface. So this cable is a little bit longer. I can't prove you what's happening there, but just trust me. We're going from the 8 ohms output, speaker output, into my audio interface, and then this is something which I can actually show you. I'm having an IR loader here, so I'm using software IR. There's no cabinet right now running here. So without the IR, this is how it would sound. Right, so this is how guitar amps sound without caps, and I'm super happy that we invented caps a couple of decades back, because this is how it sounds. If you have something like a cap. So an IR loader, IR stands for impulse response. I think most of you guys know it, know what it is. And I mean, also BluGuitar, they have the it's somewhere around this place. They have this device, right, which also has a couple of IRs in there, which is called Blue Box. So you can use that. It has a couple of great tones. What I'm right now the reason why I use my computer for this is that I have a lot of custom IRs which I've used over the years. This is a diesel cap with a modern voicing, and yeah, that's basically it. Amplifier straight into an IR, so straight into a cabinet, if you will, digital cabinet. All right, talking about cabinets. This is again something which the last topic I want to talk about, using this amp, because we'll switch to the Iridium edition in just a second. Cabinets are super important. I don't really agree with this statement, but some people, which I very much value, some people whose opinion I very much value, say that the amp is not important at all. The cab is more important. Of cabinets. Let me show you. What the cab would make. How much of a difference it makes. So the cab I have right now, as I said, it's a cabinet that I use on used on a couple of productions before, and yeah, this one is kind of a mix between a Soldano cab, a Zilla cab, a Mesa Boogie cab, an EVH cab, right? So yeah, just a couple of bunch of cabs just pushed together. Let me now switch to another setting where I would have only a diesel cab. This sounds like this. That was a diesel cap. Now we're getting back to the mixture. Huge difference. Didn't touch the amplifier. Didn't activate any pedals, nothing. Again, this is, my mixed cap kind of thing. And this is the diesel cap. I hope that everyone agrees with me that this is a massive difference. So the cap obviously plays a big role. I'll elaborate further on that on another episode of the live stream. I think that's something I should do because, I think many people just tend to forget about that. So we'll make an episode likely where I have the blue box and we go through some settings and different IRs and I tell you what I think about them. Now, the diesel cap I'm having here, just the diesel cap, is something which I think works great for riffs, right? Right? Lead guitar, it still works, but it's not as juicy as I'd like to have. Right, so it's not that this is a bad tone or anything, but it's it works better with rhythm guitar if you ask me. So now let's get to the other cap, which is the opposite. So this is the mixed cap setting which I have, and for rhythm guitar it is okay, but it feels not as controlled as it could be. Right, it feels kind of a little bit out of place. To be honest, right? So a lot of mids, a lot of just a lot of uncontrolled frequencies happening here. But if I play lead guitar, I don't want to be my sound to be over controlled, to be highly controlled. I want it to be a little more, how to put that, a little more extensive, like that. Not only about the amps and the settings and the pickups and things that guitar players talk about all day long, but also the cabinet, the IR, the device that you're using for this. All right, that's it for the AMP1 Mercury, which is the amp which I actually use the most. I use this mostly in the clean channel with a couple of pedals in front. This is kind of my daily practicing and also recording setting for non-metal kind of music. If I play metal music, I'm happy to play that. If I had a metal gig, I'd 100% be happy to just have this amplifier and then, I'd be able to get tones which I very much like. However, there's another amp which is called AMP1 Iridium, and this is certainly a metal powerhouse. I'm going to show you how that sounds. I'm going to do that in just a couple of minutes in the same style I did this live on air, likely with a couple of frame drops due to my Wi-Fi today. But before I do so, I just need to set it up very quickly. And while I do that, I show you a demo video of the AMP1 Iridium edition, which I did 1 or 2 years back, which will give you a first impression of how it sounds when it is in my hands. All right, let's go for that, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes. It's just so much fun to play this amp. This just feels like coming home for me. So, I just told you that I use the AMP1 Mercury actually more than the Iridium edition. But this is mainly because, as I said, I practice when I'm at home. I'm mostly practicing, and this amp just feels great for practicing. I'm using it with a lower gain setting and things like that. So practicing is different from playing. When I'm practicing, I'm working. When I'm playing, I'm having fun. And this is what this machine is for in my case, certainly. It just feels great every time I can't stop laughing because it's a device which is as big as my iPad. I think even smaller, and it just has some of the greatest tones I've ever heard and played. It's so much joy for me to play with this thing. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the AMP1 Iridium, and as you can see, I'm quite happy to be the proud owner of such a device. It's built very, very similar to the AMP1 Mercury. So if you've been a Mercury user until now and you are also interested in using the Iridium edition, it will feel like home in terms of controls and everything. It has some similarities in sound, and I think they're kind of built with the same kind of DNA, if you like to put it like this. However, it sounds a little different because it has been shaped to be a different device. All right, so we'll kind of do the same thing as we did with the Mercury. So those of you who tuned in from the beginning will know what to expect right now. We're here with quite neutral settings. So mids, treble, bass, everything is on 5 o'clock. Gain is somewhere around 8. And volume and reverb is set quite differently. So here we are on my side cam again. Sorry, as I said before, my tripod broke, so I had to improvise. This is not the best, the best view, but it's certainly enough to see what the settings look like. All right, that's the settings. We'll switch back to the main cam, which is here. Sorry. I'll get rid of the boost, and then we'll see what the vintage channel sounds like. Alright, there we are with the vintage channel. It doesn't sound like the vintage channel on the AMP1 Iridium Mercury at all, so it sounds substantially different to that. What are the differences that I recognize? Certainly this device has more gain, right? And this is certainly what it's meant to be. Iridium is kind of meant to be the metal edition. It can also do tones outside of metal. However, right, if you put the same settings on the AMP1 Mercury and then put the same settings here, I think you'll have a little more sustain on this device. At least that's what I feel when playing it. Now this feels slightly more aggressive out of the box. It's, again, I didn't put up the treble or anything, but it feels to have more of that. Again, there's quite some headroom, which is similar to what was happening on the AMP1 Mercury, but I feel it's more aggressive. It does have more presence, and it's overall just a slightly more aggressive tone here. The first thing I do if I play that is kind of asking myself if I'd like to have this kind of tone on this device. Because the way I said it right now, I feel that it makes less sense than on the Mercury edition. So if I want to have a vintage tone on this device, what I'd do, I'd certainly get down with the gain a little bit, right? So let's decrease that here a little bit. In order to make it a vintagey tone, I decrease some of the treble. It is certainly nice to have high frequencies, and again, this being the metal version of the AMP1 just makes sense because treble is where the definition happens, and we just talked about it a second ago and said this is kind of something which a lot of metal guitar players admire. However, for a vintage tone, right, I just shape this a little. Now we're on 6 with gain and we are on 4 with treble. Maybe I'd put up I'd add a little bit of bass here to see just how it reacts. It's a little too much. On the show to sort of this kind of style, but right, so you could certainly get what was that? You could certainly get vintage tones out of this device if you shape it the same way I've shaped the Mercury to get metal tones out of the Mercury, right? So both amps are perfectly fine to deliver metal or vintage tones. They're just shaped in a little different way. Okay, now let's put in the boost here. See how what this does to the tone. This is the AMP1 Iridium on vintage channel with the boost. Certainly works. It is like certainly voiced a little bit more towards the vintage kind of thing, but still being the Iridium edition, it sounds a little more sustained. It has a little bit more high frequencies, which will add in a little bit more perceived precision in sound, right? Which is certainly a thing that I really much admire. Now let's get to the classic channel. So let me get back to 5 on all the settings. Right, that's it. I'm gonna get a little less reverb. Turn off the boost. It's quite hard to do for me. I'm usually doing it with my feet. And then let's get to the classic channel. So here it is. Right, so here we are at the classic channel. Again, we can see that it has been slightly more shaped than the vintage channel, and to just show you how the difference is, we'll switch quickly from the classic to the vintage channel and back. So this is the classic channel. This is the vintage channel. Right, so again, same as on the Mercury edition, you can feel that the volume drops slightly, which is again likely due to cutting out some frequencies. So I feel that we have very similar changes from channel to channel as on the Mercury edition as well. So this tone feels slightly darker, again, not super dark on the classic channel, but slightly darker. It feels slightly more bass heavy. And then compare from vintage to classic channel on the Mercury to see how it performs on the guitar. Let's get it back to 8. That is the tone, but
if you record it, it's sort of high end. So this voice. Right, seems that everything seems to be better right now. Again, I'm super sorry for this inconvenience. We just tested everything last week. It seemed to work very, very well. So some things are out of our control, like internet connection and things like that. Hopefully still run my control. So talking about the classic generator thing, very, very good for chasing classic metal tones. And by classic metal tones, I'm referring to kind of 80s kind of tones. So it's not super heavy, super modern tones, but it's a modern channel. That's it for the classic channel. Now, same procedure, get rid of the boost, go to the modern channel. Everything on 5 except for gain. Super kind of, fast riffs, Mishra kind of style with it. Things like that. This is not the best guitar to play this kind of stuff, but still it's fun. Let me switch back to the other IR I just had, and because I think that's kind of a little better for rhythm guitar tones. So this is again the diesel cap IR, which I showed you before. Let's increase the volume a little bit because we're now feeding the decrease in volume. It's very, very same to the Mercury. So we so you'll feel that certainly there's a little bit more bass, which then increases volume in the bass range, kind of. But overall, this is certainly the shaping that has been done. So likely there has been quite some mid scooping happening here on this channel, which is something that is again just works great for this kind of modern heavy rhythm guitar style tone. Yeah, that's basically the main here. And the tone feels just very, very tight. So it feels slightly more compressed. It doesn't feel as, it doesn't have as much headroom as the vintage channel, for instance. It feels more compressed, which means that some of the stuff has been cut off, right? It doesn't have as many peaks as the other channels have. And therefore, it just feels very, very tight, right? And this is the definition of modern guitar tone, right? Modern metal guitar tone is a tight tone, especially when it comes to rhythm guitar. And this is just what this channel delivers a lot. Right, So I'm not even heavy tuning. This is just standard tuning. It still sounds extremely tight, and it can sound pretty heavy. Right? Certainly something, well, suitable for this kind of style. How this sounds. This is the lead channel, and again, pushing in the boost modes, most adds a little more sustain, and I think that we'll give it back a little more of the mids that have generally been cut out on that channel, right? So again, this is just due to the rules, the general school of thought when it comes to, that just is doing very great when you're playing lead guitar. All right, so I give it another try, playing a little more guitar solo-ish kind of things on this channel. And my eyes are still on the chat, so I see a lot of German comments. I speak German. We keep it in English, but I'm happy to answer anything. So if you have a question, you can also leave it there in German. If you have a question in English, leave it there in English. I'm trying to answer a couple of things if you want me to in the beginning and now towards the end. And yeah, let's. This is so much fun. I could go on playing this amp forever. All right, that's it. That's it from my end today. So yeah, I was very much enjoying giving you a little overview about what the AMP1 Iridium and the AMP1 Mercury can do from all of the different voicings, vintage, classic, and modern. They give you the opportunity to deep dive in any kind of tone that you could think of, and all of this is just happening by an analog amplifier, which I find very impressive. Have a little spin on turning knobs and things like that. So yeah, super happy to be on the show. Super sorry for, and I hope that honored to be here, and I hope to see you again very soon. All right, that's it. Take care, everyone, and see you next time. Bye.